All right, now that we've got the green sand in, which is our top dressing sand that goes in and that helps mask or hide the white sand that we put in first. What I like to do, and which is what I normally do, I like to put after I put my cups in, I like to sand the whole green first. Now the reason why I like to do that is because if you cut the cups out first and then decide to sand, what you're trying to avoid is pushing sand down inside the cup, and you lose a lot of your sand. And then to avoid that, you'll end up working around the cup and not getting even coverage everywhere, and it just becomes harder to fill the sand in. So I like to sand everything first, but what I do is I mark the holes and I put a nail in the turf and I sand everything, and then I come back and I just locate where the nail is. Now, you've got a lot of sand around here, and what I like to do is just take the vacuum and then I'll suck out the sand. Now, in some instances, and you're seeing where I'm marking it right here because the nail's right there. If the sand is wet, it's not going to come out of the green very well. And when you're trying to cut this, especially this Shopmaker product, which is almost an inch tall, and we've got 4 pounds of sand in here, it makes it difficult trying to cut through the turf to create a perfect circle. So a little tip that you can do, especially if the sand is wet, is I just take a hammer and I tap where the nail is, and it creates like a trampoline effect. And what it does, as you can see, it's causing all of that sand to pop up out of the green. Now I can take the vacuum and I can suck a lot of the sand out, and again, I can do it several times. And what you're noticing is me hitting here in the center is the only place that the sand is being disrupted is right where the cup is. So you can do that as a little tip or trick, and then I'll suck this out, and then I'll make my cuts, and then that way I can pull up the cup. Now another thing is, I'm using this large nail spike because after I make my cut to get in, if you can't get your hand in to pull the cup up, I like to take the large nail spike because it's got the lip on it here, and I'll reach down in underneath the cup to get some leverage, and then I can pull the cup up to jar it loose and then bring it up far enough so that I can cut around the outside diameter of the cup. That's key too. We don't cut on the inside diameter of the cup, we cut on the outside diameter. That way you can raise the cup up and make it flush or just below the surface and lock it into place, and then fill in some more sand around it so that the turf and the sand fits perfectly around the side of it. It's not overlapping, which when you pull the flagpole up, if it's overlapping the flagpole with a lip on it, the base will catch it and you'll constantly be lifting your turf up. So we'll come back in a minute. Okay, so now I've vacuumed out all the sand and I made essentially an X or a star cut. So what we do is we start in the center where the nail hole was, and we go all the way until the blade hits the inside diameter of the cup. And I like to make a cross or an X, however you want to call it, and all this gets vacuumed out. Then from there, I can then reach down in the center and then that way I pull the cup up. Now, if you can kind of see, it's raised right there where I pull it up. Then what I'll do is I'll peel this back enough that I can get the blade right on the outside diameter of the cup and then work it around. And we'll do that in just a second. Now, obviously, it's going to be a little bit harder because we've got some sand in here and that dulls the blade pretty quick. So you want to make sure that you've got a sharp blade. And you can kind of see here, that's the inside diameter and the outside diameter. And the blade, which I'm flexing a little bit, just obviously carefully don't break it, is on the outside diameter right here. A little fuzzy, but there we go. So that's where the blade is at. And then all I'm gonna do is I'm just going to trace around that, kind of a little bit of a sawing motion, and then that way I'm only cutting out a little chunk at a time. But what it allows me to do, if you can kind of see here, is that the turf itself stays to the outside. And a little bit better there. So now the turf stays to the outside where it's supposed to, and then I can push the cut back down to the level that it needs to be, and I can add some rocks down on the base so it does not move any deeper than I want it to. So I'll get it set to the level I want, and I'll add some rocks down in there to fill up that void, and we'll show you how to do that here shortly. And that's one of the chunks that I cut when I make my little cross cut. So now you can see this is obviously raised up, but the turf is perfectly cut around the actual outside diameter. So if we were to push the cup back in, the turf is just cut to around the outside diameter. And then obviously we'll get it down to the depth we need so that when the ball rolls over, it just rolls in and it's not hitting the edge of the cup. Now the other thing is, the reason why I like to do all the sanding first is that now all of this is already filled with sand. I just now have to set this to the level that I want, and then from there I can just add in some green sand if need be for anything else that I've disrupted. But otherwise I am perfectly already filled with all my sand, and it's even all the way across.